You've been told that your 401k is just for retirement, and that's just not true. And in fact, it could be the exact tool that gets you into your very first home. So in today's video, I'm talking all about 401ks and the ways that you can actually use it to buy a home without wrecking your plans for retirement. Plus, I'm also going to be talking about some common misconceptions that I see when it comes to 401ks that actually hold people back from reaching their next financial goal. But first, my name is Tiffany. I'm a loan officer here in Las Vegas, Nevada. I've helped over 200 families with their real estate needs, and this topic in particular is so important for me to share. I've personally used all of the methods that I'm going to be telling you guys about in this video. I'm well versed in 401ks. I've been in the corporate world for a long time, and I've learned a lot of this through trial and error. If I could save anyone's time here, I will consider this video a success because there's so much that people don't understand about 401ks that I think holds people back truthfully from being able to reach the next step of their financial journey just because they didn't realize they had this as a resource. So I'm so excited to be talking about 401ks today and talking about the ways that you can use it, not just to buy a home, but to put yourself in a better financial position today instead of in 65 years when it won't really even matter if we make it that long. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with today's video. So let's start us off on a very solid foundation, and let's just go ahead and clear up some misconceptions that I see people talk about when it comes to 401ks. The very first thing that I see people talk about that I think is just a total waste of time is that my retirement cannot be touched until I'm 65 or I'm going to retire. And while true, the purpose of a 401k is to be your retirement fund, you can actually take advantage of some benefits in some ways I'm going to be talking about later on in this video today. You could be using it today. You could be using it 10 years from now. You don't have to wait until you're 65 to fully get access to your 401k. Now, there are going to be some obstacles if you decide to go that route, which I'll talk about later on in this video. But your 401k is not just this total far and away forbidden thing that you can't touch until you're 65. Although that is the goal with it, so that you can grow and accumulate and you have a really nice saving by the time you're 65. There are options if you would like to use those funds early. The next misconception that I see is that the balance is all mine. If you log into your 401k and you see the balance is, let's just say $20,000, that you have access to all $20,000 in that account. And that's usually not the case. Whenever you enter in an agreement with your employer on your 401k, whether you do a Roth or you do just a regular one, you are agreeing to some portion of your employer paying into your 401k. There's a portion you pay into each month and then the portion your employer pays into each month. Every employer is a little bit different. I remember my very first job, it was a dollar for dollar match, which was insane. No one offers that. That was an incredible deal, and I should have took advantage of that way more than I did. But I quickly learned when I got to my next employer that it was only 6%. Every employer is going to be a little bit different as far as what they're willing to contribute towards your 401k, but usually there is a mixture there. If you're working a normal W-2 9-to-5 type job, they're going to pitch in some, I'm going to pitch in some, and my balance should be the mixture of the two. Now, if you were to go look at your balance right now, you're going to see two different balance numbers. You're going to see that big shiny number that is both the sum of your employer and you. And then right below, you're going to see a little line that says vested balance. Now, the vested balance is if anything should happen, if you should get fired, if you should leave that job, if you decide to take that money out of that account, you only have a portion of whatever the funds are that your employer has contributed, or if the market's grown, etc. And that's because usually you have to be with the company for a certain amount of time or reach a certain status to get access to the full amount. Now, in my case, whenever I was messing around a lot with my 401k, the vested balance was way less than the balance that I saw as soon as I logged in. So it didn't end up working out for me the way that I anticipated. But again, this is one of those things where if I can save anyone some time, I'm going to. Make sure if you are using your 401k for any part of the home buying process, look at your vested balance and not just whatever the big shiny number is as soon as you log on to your 401k provider. Because you could be making plans not knowing that you're actually way less than you anticipated being. Last but not least, you have no control over your 401k. A lot of people just sign up for the 401k, they'll take whatever their employer is going to give them, and then they just let it do its thing. They assume that it's like a one-size-fits-all arrangement. And the truth is that usually whenever your company enters into an agreement with some kind of 401k provider, whether that's Fidelity, whether that's Vanguard, or if you guys have some other form of 401k, usually you are assigned an advisor for your company. You can call up that advisor and say, hey, my plans for retirement are this. How can you help me get there with my 401k? And what do I need to contribute? Basically, So it's a partnership more than it is just like a savings account. I see so many people, they leave it alone, they don't touch it, they never talk to their advisor, they never ask questions. It wasn't even something I thought I could do until I realized that I wanted to be a little bit more conservative with my investing portfolio. I had someone in my life looking for a more aggressive investment form. So they called up the advisor, was like, hey, I want to do this faster than anticipated. How can you help me get there? So then that financial advisor knew that person's goals or were like, hey, you know what? Why don't we shift some things around that we were investing in currently and we can actually get you a more aggressive form of a return back. If we decide instead of investing in a mutual fund, we'll put more money into stocks or maybe we'll put more money into real estate, they were like, you know what, we could get you a much more aggressive return on your investment. That's just something that I never really see people talk about, especially if you're working for an employer. You have someone assigned to you from that company that is handling your 401k, and you have access to call them and say, hey, I want a really aggressive return or I want a really conservative return. I don't have any plans to retire anytime soon, and just be a good steward of the resources that I'm giving you. So you have control in your court as far as what you want from your 401k. It's not just a one size fits all. Everyone in the company gets the exact same thing and invest in the exact same things, and your portfolios are exactly the same. You have control over how aggressive you want that portfolio to be. The best thing that I would advise you is when you're taking that meeting with HR about your 401k and what plans you decide to do, make sure you get the advisor's name that is responsible for your company's account. You have their phone number, and you schedule a meeting with them yourself and talk about what your goals are for this 401k account. So I mentioned I'm going to be talking about 3 different ways that you can use your 401k to help buy your first home. The first one is directly withdrawing the funds from your vested balance. Now, I use emphasis on vested because, again, I mentioned earlier how I had made plans with the full balance and I didn't actually have the full balance I could use. I could only use the vested, so it ended up not working out for me. So again, in the interest of you saving some time, I'm making sure to distinguish the fact that you have to look at your vested balance if you're using any of these funds for your transaction, especially if you're going to go the withdrawal route, because the withdrawal route is basically you looking at those funds and say, hey, I can use that now for my purchase. Let me go ahead and take out the money that I've already saved up. There are some pros and cons if you decide to go this route, but I think it's worth mentioning the cons first. The very first con is that there is a hefty fine and a hefty penalty in order to take the funds before you're 59 and a 59 and a half is a very oddly specific number, but in the tax code, that's what they consider retirement eligible to access these funds in your 401k account. So if you decide to take it out before you reach that 59 and a half number, there is usually fees that you're going to have to pay. It's usually about a 10% penalty on whatever you're going to take out, as well as the income tax that is going to be charged for you, because this is technically new income that's entering your house. So in a normal 401k, you usually contribute to your 401k account before the government has taken their cuts of your taxes. Let's just say you get paid $2,500 a paycheck. The 401k takes about 10%, so $250. That means now that the taxable income that the government can actually take taxes from is now $2,250 instead of $2,500. How this usually ends up playing out is, in the long run, if you continue with this 401k and you are retired and you're starting to take funds out of those accounts, it is now seen as income and you have to pay income taxes on it every year. And again, this is assuming a normal 401k account. I know there's a lot of discourse online about Roth 401ks, and that's when you start contributing to that 401k after your paycheck has already been paid for. For all intents and purposes, I'm just going to use a normal 401k. In a Roth 401k, again, you're contributing after the government has already taken their cut of your paycheck, which means now that the funds, whenever you go to retire, you don't have to pay income taxes on those funds because you've already paid for it on the front end. So that's the difference between the two. For all intents and purposes of the video, I'm going to be talking about a normal 401k. And in a normal 401k, you contribute pre-tax. So if you're going to take those funds out, that is going to be seen as additional income into your life. That might be the difference pushing you into a different tax bracket. That's just something to be aware of, is the tax implications of deciding to withdraw from your 401k early, especially if you have a normal 401k account and not a Roth 401k account. So you get hit with a 10% penalty and you have to pay income taxes on it. They take that as soon as you take the funds out of your account. So it's not you get to just have fun with all this money and then you get taxed on it later. Usually the government takes their cut first. So If you have a certain amount that you're thinking you're going to be playing with, then you realize, oh, wait a second, I actually only have a portion of what I thought I was going to be able to use, which is exactly what happened to me before. I thought I had all these funds to play with. I had way less, and it ended up not working out the way I wanted it to. So that is something to be aware of if you decide to go this withdrawal route, is that you actually have a very hefty fine and you don't have as much to work with as you may have assumed. I would just assume you're going to be in the neighborhood of 75% of whatever it is that you're requesting. That's as much as you're probably going to end up getting in the long run. Now, some benefits to going this route is that the money is available usually pretty immediately. Like usually your 401k company can cut you a check or direct deposit it or wire it to you, etc. Usually pretty immediately. So if you're on a time crunch and you accidentally spend too much and don't have enough to close, usually you can get that option very quickly, and that helps band-aid whatever boo-boo you did. So it's a very great option if you are down to the wire and need a quick solution. Withdrawing from your balance is probably the quickest of the options that I'm mentioning later in this video, because again, it's just sitting in an account. You just need to get clearance from your 401k company, whoever is mastering it, whether that's Fidelity, Vanguard, whatever, and then they will go ahead and get those funds to you. They will take the fines and the penalties, but they can get you whatever you need in about a couple of days or so. It's usually not a big deal. It depends on your situation, if you can live with the cons or if that's a total no for you and you don't really want to see all those fines taken out just for this one transaction, then some of the later options may end up working out better for you. The next method that you can use in order to use your 401k to help buy a home is to take a loan out against your vested balance. Now, there are rules and restrictions here, so proceed with caution, but I've actually used this myself, and I have to say, I think it was a great fix for what I needed at the time. I used it for personal reasons, so this could be used if you are buying a home or have some personal finance stuff. Maybe you want to buy a car, whatever you need to get a personal loan for. You can actually take a loan against your 401k instead, assuming you have a balance. Now, another thing to note here is that it does have to be your vested balance, and you actually cannot use all of it. I believe most places restrict it up to 50%. That was when I pulled it out. That's what they told me. You can only use like half of it, but maybe some employers have it a little bit differently, or depending on who your 401k provider is, they might have different rules or restrictions. At the time, I believe we were using Vanguard, so they told me I can only use up to 50%, but that might be something you discuss with your financial advisor if the need should ever come to it. A lot of people don't realize that you can actually take out a loan against your 401k. And it seems similarly if you've ever had to do like a secured card or a secured loan where you put money up front and then they give you a card or a loan as a result. A lot of times people use it to build credit. That's what I used to build credit when I was 18. I put a secured loan down. I had $1,000 from working summers and I really wanted to start build credit. So I went out and got a secure credit card with my credit union and they helped me build credit. So that is something that a lot of people that I know of use to build credit, but think of that in the exact same sense as if you needed to take a loan against your 401k to buy a house. Because it is a secured loan, you have funds behind it. You can actually go to your 401k provider, your financial advisor, and say, hey, I want to take a loan out against my 401k. And they'll actually charge you a very small interest rate to basically put a block on whatever percentage of the funds you end up using. The only thing that sucks is that you do lose out on market growth. It's not growing in the market as much as it should be. But the nice thing is that you don't lose the entire balance. So as soon as you make peace with however you want to resolve this loan, those funds never lose their value. Like you're not going to go less than that amount, basically. And then it gets put back into the market. It can grow, it can return, all of these things. So that is a really great example of using that loan option. Now, here is where things get a little bit tricky with the loan option because, again, it depends on who your 401k provider is, but you have a few different options here to resolve that loan. You can either decide, hey, I'm going to make monthly payments, which is what you would normally assume if you were taking out a loan. In the eyes of a mortgage lender, I don't look at that as part of a debt because it is secured against funds you already have. So if you default against that for any reason, you've made up for it because it's locked away anyways. But I don't consider that change to your debt to income. So that's a good news there. Another option that I had, and this is what I personally took, but I don't know if I would necessarily advise anyone to do it this way. I just took it as taxable income. So instead of making payments on it each month, I just decided, hey, give me a 1099. I'm just going to include it as additional income. And I'm okay because I wasn't anywhere close to where the tax bracket was going to change me. So I wasn't scared if I took it as taxable income, it was going to put me into a new tax bracket. That might be a concern if you are someone who's, on the line, or if that amount that you end up taking from your 401k pushes you into a different tax bracket. You can decide, hey, I don't want to make any payments on it. I would rather just take it as taxable income and pay it on my tax return. So that's what I did. Again, I don't know if I would advise everyone to do that route. It was just the one that made the most sense for me in the time. I didn't really want another bill. I'm not sure if that option even still exists and if it's the best one for most people, but that is just the option that I took when I took a loan out against my 401k. It was for personal reasons, so I didn't want to add another bill for my monthly expenses. So I just took it as taxable income. It ended up not really making a difference to me because I was nowhere close to the tax brackets changing, so I was fine with it. And the amount I ended up taking out was very small. But if you are taking out 20, 30,000, then that might push you into a different tax bracket. That is something to be aware of. And last but not least, if you decide to just leave your company, usually these loans are set for a 5-year term. We could do it as a 2-year, a 3-year, or a 5-year term. But if you decide to take a 5-year term, you're essentially signing yourself up to work there for the next 5 years. And what I say is technically you do have options, but at that point you either need to pay it off entirely or you just need to take it as taxable income. You no longer have the option to make that monthly payment. So if that is the route you've decided to go and you're like, hey, I don't want to work here anymore, but I also have this loan that I need to worry about, you need to be prepared with what option you would prefer, if you would just take it as taxable income or if you can go ahead and pay off the whole loan. Or just decide that they can take it from the 401k and now you can't roll over those funds to your next employer. I know it's a lot of info, but there is some consequences if you decide to leave your employer because they are contributing into that 401k account. So if you leave that employer, you have to make a decision pretty much right away what you want to do with that loan if you decide to go that route. But that is an option that I don't see a lot of people talk about. You can take a loan against your 401k. One of the benefits I mentioned earlier was that funds are usually pretty fast. With taking a loan, it doesn't work as fast. Just because you have to talk to your financial advisor about it, they usually have to get approval. Your funds get put on hold. There's usually a bit more of a process. If you're going to go this route, I would recommend initiating that a couple weeks before you're supposed to close. That way you ensure the funds have gotten into your account and you know exactly how you're going to approach it as far as if you're going to pay it off, if you're going to make monthly payments, if you're going to take it as taxable income. You have time to make a good financial decision. But again, that is one of the consequences you do have to think about if you're going to go that route, is you pretty much need to give it some time in order to actually complete. Don't expect you being able to take out this loan a week before closing and being good to go for the closing table. I would just say if you're going this route, give yourself time. Last but not least, this isn't necessarily as much a method as the other two were, but it's something that I don't think people really consider as an option until they're presented with it. You can use your 401k as reserves. So if you've ever bought a home before, we'll look at cash needed to close, your closing costs, your down payment, all of these things. We also require what's called reserves at the very end of the transaction, just to make sure we're not bankrupting you in order to buy a home. So depending on your loan type, there's a certain amount of months that we would look at, somewhere in the neighborhood between 3 to 6 months of however much that mortgage payment is. So in this example, if your mortgage is $2,000 every month, we would look somewhere between $6,000 to $12,000 left in some kind of an account. That way, if anything should happen post us closing, we know that you can make those payments for at least 3 to 6 months. So that is what reserves are. And a lot of times people assume I just only need the down payment, or I only need down payment and closing costs. But a lot of times people don't realize that we actually need reserve funds that are just going to be sitting in an account without using it in the transaction at all in order for us to close your loan. And a way that I like to get around reserves, because a lot of times I'm working with people who have just enough for their closing costs and down payment, or just their down payment, or just their closing costs. If you have some kind of fund saved in a 401k, I can actually use that to help offset that reserve requirement needed. We won't necessarily take anything out, but it helps make you look stronger as a borrower because there are funds that we could technically pull out if we ever needed to, or if you guys ever run into some kind of financial issue, you do have some funds there. And we can also use this with any asset accounts you have, if you have other trading accounts or investment accounts. But for this purpose, we're just going to be talking about a 401k. You can use that to show your lender that, hey, I'm not totally going to be bankrupt if we decide to move forward with this loan. That helps paint you as a much stronger borrower when we go to present it to our team on the back end that's going to approve you or deny you. I don't really see people talk about reserves a lot in general. I might make a video about it because, again, that's something that tends to catch people off guard when I talk to them in my initial conversations is having that plan for reserves that are not going to be at all on the transaction. But your 401k can help you get over that threshold needed to show that you are going to be okay if you decide to buy a home. But that's a method that, again, I don't really see a lot of people talk about. And it's not necessarily as much of a method as the other two were, but it's something that, again, I think could help so many people who we don't have reserves planned for, but they do have a 401k. And so you may not be as totally out of luck as you may think. Speaking from personal experience, I've used every method that I've talked about, and it really depends on what your goals are financially. If you are in a time crunch and the withdrawal option makes the most sense, then withdraw. If you are someone who doesn't need it right away and you have a plan and you think this through and you realize this is part of the plan, that I think the loan is probably the safest option of the first two. But if you are someone who has funds for closing costs and down payment, or you have a plan for closing costs and down payment, like you're going to use a down payment assistance loan, or you're going to get the sellers to pay for your closing costs, and you're just like, wow, I cannot figure out this one piece that needs to happen, which is the reserves, then this is a great option for you to be able to get into a home sooner than anticipated instead of trying to come up with other funds to fill that reserve requirement. I do think that each of these options comes with its pros and its cons, but again, that's everything in life. Regardless, if you decide to save up money, you might be waiting longer than anticipated. So, no matter what you do, there's a pro and con to it. But I think it really just depends on what your financial goals are and which consequence can you live with. Not even necessarily which one do you like more, but which consequence can you actually live with the most. That will determine which method makes the most sense for you. But again, I don't see a lot of people talking about this in general because I don't think a lot of people who work in real estate understand the 401k. Just because, again, real estate is usually a self employed kind of business, especially realtors. They usually don't have the option to invest in a 401k or they don't really understand a 401k. They don't even know how to advise their client, or they might talk to a client and think, oh, they don't have money. I can't work with them. Instead of realizing that there are so many different options and financial tools that they can use to help their clients get into a home. And same thing with clients. There's so many different options and financial tools that you can use in order to get into a home that you may not even realize are an option for you. So that's why I love talking about 401ks. Again, I've used every method you can think of when it comes to your 401k for dumb reasons, for smart reasons, etc. So I love talking about it, and I think that it's a tool that not a lot of people utilize to its fullest extent. I know that I spent so long not talking to the financial advisor that was actually working my 401k, and now that I know this other side and I know that, hey, I have control over this, like it was the most eye-opening experience for me. So if there's one thing you take away from this video, it's if you have a 401k, become friends with your financial advisor that guards your account, because I'm telling you, they're a wealth of knowledge. They can help you get to your financial goals faster, and they can actually talk you through which one makes the most sense for what goals you have and which of these methods makes the most sense if your goal is to buy a home. They're going to know that better than anyone else. I can talk about it from the mortgage stance, and because I've gone through each of these methods, I can tell you my experience. But that financial advisor has seen so many clients that they're going to realize, hey, if you told me your goal was to grow fast and then you want to withdraw your funds, that doesn't make any sense. They're going to be the ones to ration with you about which of these methods is actually the best in your personal situation. But if you have any questions on the mortgage side about which one makes the most sense for you in your situation, I'm going to leave my contact information in the description below. I'm happy to chat, talk through what I know about 401ks. Any of these make sense for what your situation is. But with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, or if you found any of this information helpful. Everything you do, whether it's liking, subscribing, maybe sharing it with a friend, it really helps the channel. Thank you for watching today's video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.